And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us. And one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it. And that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Welcome back to Tinfoil Tales. I'm your host, Brandon Wright. Tonight we're going to be joined by Dave from Echoplex Media. It'll be a little bit of a different type of conversation than we normally do around here. It won't so much be about experiences or anything like that, but kind of dive into those conspiracies and some of the bad things that go on with people that fall into these conspiracies. Before we bring Dave on, though, if you ever have an experience or a story you'd like to share and you want to be a guest on Tinfoil Tales, there's 2 things you can do. You can send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to tinfoiltales.com and go to the contact section. Both will get you in contact with me, but write me an email, write me a message. You can send it that way. We'll get you scheduled for a future episode. If you want to help the podcast out, make sure to share it around. Word of mouth is the best way to get it out there. You can leave a 5-star review. 5-star reviews help with the rankings. If you leave a written review, I will read it on a future episode. But that is definitely one of the best ways to help with the podcast and help it continue to grow. So for everyone that's out there doing that, I definitely appreciate it. Make sure to follow us on all the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If you watch it on YouTube, we are available on other streaming platforms as well, like Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to podcasts at. And if you listen on there, you want to go to the YouTube channel, we're also on there. But I think now we're going to bring Dave on. Interested in talking to him, see what we got to discuss. Hope you guys enjoy what we're going to talk about. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'd like to take this time to welcome my guest tonight, producer Dave from Echoplex Media. Thanks for coming on here and talking with me.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
So you obviously have your own little podcast like mine and everything else. So what is it that you kind of talk about?
We're Twitch streamers primarily. We do release stuff as podcasts, and that's where we started. But we sort of hit a roof sort of on our community and our following. So we had to do something, and we ended up on Twitch. We have a bunch of shows, but the stuff that pertains to what you're talking about, we like to talk about cults and high demand, high control groups and conspiracy theories. Like on Friday, we do a show called Conspiracy Bingo. But oftentimes we see similarities in conspiracy communities with some of what we see in cults and high control and high demand groups. So that kind of crosses over.
Yeah. I've had a few episodes with cults and stuff like that too. There's always an underlying common theme, it seems like, when it comes to stuff like that. And then I know there's a lot of conspiracies here lately with certain groups and everything else that think there's certain things going on in the world, which I'm not going to say there aren't, but there's a lot of cult vibes in certain groups of that way too. So
yeah, I mean, my interest in cults primarily comes from in like 2004, 2005, a good friend of mine ran off to Clearwater to join the Scientology mothership. And so I've been fascinated with cult of Scientology ever since then.
That's I made mention to it on one of my previous episodes that that's something I wanted to discuss, but I don't feel like being canceled by the specific group because I know how they can be. So, but no, that's
maybe we can get into it a little bit later, but the anti-Scientology community oftentimes operates like a cult too, where they have a little bit of in-group, out-group mentality going on and little bit of lack of looking in the mirror at their own behavior going on within that community as well.
Yeah, I think religions in general, for the most part, they all typically have some cult vibes to them, one way or the other. So,
well, there's a joke, right, that a cult becomes a religion when they kill a few million people and force their beliefs on millions more.
yeah. But yeah, so you got I know you said you had some stuff you want to talk about, so you want to jump on into it. You can go right ahead.
Yeah, the name of your show is Tinfoil Tales, so I thought I'd tell a tinfoil tale if that's okay with you.
Well, that's perfectly fine with me.
So this is about a guy named Michael J. Murphy. You people might have seen him if they saw him in like popular media on the Joe Rogan show. Joe Rogan Questions Everything. It was a show that Joe did about chemtrails, HARP, and I guess Morgellons. I don't know if you're familiar with Morgellons.
No, I'm not.
Well, don't go down the rabbit hole. Not worth your time. And this isn't about his appearance on Joe Rogan. This is about Michael Murphy's life and his unfortunate passing. I guess I'll start at the beginning. In 2010, this guy Michael Murphy put out this movie called "What in the World Are They Spraying?" It's obviously a movie about chemtrails. To somewhat great fanfare, people now call him like the godfather of the chemtrails movement. And then a couple of years later, he put out a movie called "Why in the World Are They Spraying?" to much less fanfare because it was basically just a remixed version of the first movie with a lot of the same footage. And now when you look at any chemtrails documentary, if you were to look at them, they'd have a lot of the same footage that you would have seen in What in the World Are They Spraying? A lot of it from the media and some of it that Michael took himself. And I think Why in the World Are They Spraying came out in 2014, if I'm not mistaken. But if we were to fast forward to 2016, Michael J. Murphy raised about 15 grand for a documentary that he was going to call Unconventional Gray, and then he disappeared. Word on the street was that he had raised money in 2014 and disappeared, but I really can't confirm that because a lot of this stuff is happening on Facebook groups and pages that got purged or that people deleted themselves. After Michael took the money in 2016, he made his first post, a weird post about the supposed fraud committed against him by members of his family regarding Murphy Oil, and we couldn't really confirm that he had anything to do with anything called Murphy Oil. And then shortly after that, it was discovered he had lost his housing and was living on the streets of Inglewood, California. He was making Facebook Live posts about all manner of unhinged things, ranging from Mariah Carey being in danger and him saving her life, to a Saudi princess being tortured within earshots of his camp. Pretty strange stuff. The chemtrails community were saying that it wasn't him. So we reached out to him and we had an interview. We spoke with him in August of 2016, like 4 or 5 months into this, I guess, episode, to confirm that it was the same person making those posts, and it was indeed him. So the interview was very difficult. He rambled on about this Murphy Oil thing, and he was like really kind of hard to pin down. But we did figure out that this was not like a clone, as the chemtrail community was saying. After that, they decided that he was actually an MK Ultra victim, and that because he had gotten to the too close to the truth, or that the government was forcing him to use meth because he had gotten too close to the truth. And his wild posts continued through about March of 2020. And in the comments of these posts, there were basically 3 kinds of people: his chemtrail fans who kept telling him he was MK Ultra, trolls making fun of his wild claims, and then there were concerned friends and family members like begging him to get some help. Over time, 2 of these groups converged, but it wasn't really what you would expect, right? Actually, the trolls ended up joining the concerned friends and family member, telling him he needs to seek some help. And the chemtrails people insisted the people telling him to get help were actually part of the MK Ultra harassment they decided he was being subjected to. Around March 2020, his page basically went dark. There was speculation that he had gone to rehab with help from family. We were unable to confirm that. In July of 2020, my co-host and I found out live on the air that Michael J. Murphy had passed away. And to this day, our article about his passing is the only thing written about it, really. The conspiracy movement that claimed to have loved the guy literally had nothing to say about his passing after he passed away. So that was my short tinfoil tale.
So they think, obviously, he went to MK Ultra, and then his ramblings and everything on were basically being led on by that. So, but the community he built that followed him once he passed away didn't have anything to say about it.
Oh, they'll still cite his movie. They and oftentimes I'll see people citing him like as if he's like present day still with us.
I'm surprised they haven't made it sound like he was actually killed off by the government.
I am too. I don't think he was killed off by the government, but I'm surprised that hasn't been the case, you know, that you would think that that's what they would do.
That's what I said. I'm kind of surprised because I know how groups go and how the conspiracy things go. And I'm kind of I wouldn't say I'm a conspiracy theorist to an extent, but like I don't necessarily always believe the cover story because it's just how I am. I never have believed it, even before I did a podcast or anything like that. Like that's just kind of my mentality about certain things. And I've been on some of these groups and I've seen how people act and I've seen how people where their minds go. So it is surprising to me that no one's made a big deal about his death.
So I think what happened when he largely disappeared in March of 2020, I think they just kind of forgot about him.
I
Because we
guess
found out about him, his death, from a group that used to belong to chemtrails people. It was called Chemtrails Are Killing Us on Facebook with a bunch of exclamation points. But those people being the brain geniuses they are, a bunch of trolls were able to gain control of that group. And now it is a honeypot, so to speak. So, but there was, the news, that was where we found well, I don't think we found it. I think somebody in our chat on Twitch was like, hey, can I DM you on Discord or whatever? And they kind of told us what happened.
I know there's obviously March of 2020 was a pretty chaotic month. That was the beginning of the whole lockdown era. So maybe that's what I figured. Maybe that's where some of more people were looking into the conspiracy because they had nothing better to do. So it's kind of strange that they all just kind of forgot about it. But I guess with everything else going on in the world, they just overlooked it.
So the other thing, and it wasn't in my notes, but by this time, by like maybe right before COVID, we were starting to notice that online, especially on Facebook, where there's people congregated, the chemtrails movement had sort of like fizzled in a way, that because like QAnon was getting so big, I think a lot of the creators that were making content about chemtrails either got sucked into that, or if they didn't get sucked into that, they kind of got left behind because QAnon was like a meta conspiracy that included things like chemtrails if you wanted it to. And so the people that were only talking about chemtrails weren't talking about, the tunnels under the Getty or the mole children or whatever it was. So I think I think a lot of those people lost their audience. And as they started to lose their audiences, I believe because the pie started shrinking, and I think some of those people were relying on things like Patreon or other kinds of donations. I think they ended up having nobody to be mad at. And so they started getting mad at each other and they started sniping at each other. And there's a lot of infighting.
I think a lot of these conspiracy things, like even with Q and all this other stuff, I think the person that makes it, and then from there, grifters hop in there and start making their own radical claims, and it just keeps spiraling out of control from that point. There's something right now that me and my friend kind of joke around about it here and there. He'll send me a new clip or whatever, so I don't really pay attention to it because I think it's all bullshit. But there's a countdown clock, and it's a Q official. I was like, oh, he's official. And I say he, I don't know what it is, but every time there's a countdown and then another countdown starts after that next one. Like it's always vague terms like the end of the world is now, and then it counts down for like 5 days, and then all of a sudden it's not the end of the world and it goes to something else. Like this is ridiculous. And
it reminds me of Jesus coming back. If you remember, the rapture was supposed to happen in 2012.
Yeah, I made that reference too. I was like, it's almost like we're waiting for Jesus to come back, like the Christianity and everyone else's beliefs, like God's coming back, Jesus is coming back, and like the Messiah is returning. I was like, every time it doesn't happen, they keep pushing that clock back a little bit. Finally, people on Twitter are starting to harass the guy every time he posts up something new because nothing's happened for the last couple months that he's been posting stuff.
Twitter being what it is, I'm surprised you used the word finally before you started talking about anybody being hassled on Twitter.
Well, at first there's some on there still believing it, but for the most part, I've been noticing now it's all people giving him shit. But there's been I'm the type of person that I'm going to look into things a little bit deeper than probably the average person. So I went to the host of the website that it's from, and it's just the hosting service. Like you can go through the source coding and everything. And I found out it's just like one of those typical, not a GoDaddy, but one of those typical websites you can just get a website from. And then the followers that he follows on Twitter are all like Instagram models and stuff. Like they're all like half naked women or really pretty girls or stuff like that. I was like, if this dude's here trying to spread like super information and enlighten the world. He's only wanting to follow these like good looking women. It's like he's just some friggin' basement dwelling neckbeard guy, most likely, and thinks he's
Or,
cool because he's out here posting a bunch of crap.
or do you think maybe that, and I don't think the strategy would work, but do you think the strategy of trying to follow all these influencers is hopes that these influencers follow him back and share his work?
Possibly. I thought about that, but it's like, I don't know. I just kind of keep going back to the whole troll vibe. He's just trolling people. And I feel like it's more or less all the whole thing kind of goes to. He's got a website and like I think there's a Patreon and everything's like, who would be paying this? Like, you're not even getting any information, but why would you donate money to this person or whatever it actually? I don't know. Big psyop, possibly.
You'd be surprised at what kinds of things people actually are able to monetize, though. I mean, you probably wouldn't be surprised. You said you've been looking into this stuff, so
No.
it's kind of not surprising sometimes. Well, the first couple times it's surprising, and then you look at somebody's Patreon and you're like, yeah, of course they're making $5,000 a month on this, or whatever. You're like, yeah, this makes sense. This tracks.
Yeah. I set up a Patreon recently and I'm doing like the ad free stuff and I was going to do some bonus content for anyone that wanted to join. And I had one subscriber and then they canceled instantly because they didn't mean to join this Tinfoil Tales because there's another Tinfoil Tales from Australia, I guess, and it talks about some weird movement they got going on out there. I was like, no, I'm not that person. So they meant to join these two ladies podcast and then they tried to file a thing wanting their money back. I was like, I don't have anything to do with any of that stuff. So I don't know whatever happened with it, but like mine's literally $1.99 a month. It's not like I'm making any money and I have no subscribers on it currently.
Yeah, that's funny because when you first reached out, that's what I thought it was because I have a lot of we jokingly in our Twitch community we call them the Australian day drinking team because our shows are like start at 7 or 9, and so that's like the afternoon tomorrow in Australia, and there's a lot of Aussies in there, and they're always drinking during my show. So I do in fact check out the other Tinfoil Tales show. It's actually pretty good.
I've never listened to it. I didn't even know it existed until last year when I started getting all these messages from people from Australia asking me what I thought about this person and what about. I was like, I have no idea what the hell they're talking about. So then I did a search. I was like, well, apparently I'm not the only Tinfoil Tales out there, but it is what it is. So.
Yeah, they in Australia, you probably learned they call them cookers, right?
Yep.
Because all the best slang, at least from like English speaking countries, either comes from Australia or Northern Ireland. And I know the Irish would quibble with the fact that I think they speak English, but still, that's where all the best slang comes from.
I guess I've never really checked out the episodes or anything. I've never even listened to them, so I couldn't even tell you what they sounded like or anything about it. Like I do my thing, and that's about it. I don't even really listen to very many other podcasts. It's just I don't want to be influenced by anybody else or anything about it. So like, there's a couple ones that I've listened to, and that's the only ones I've really ever listened to. And I just kind of stay in that sort of thing. I might check out some stuff here or there. Like I'll check out an episode of someone else, especially if they're coming on the show or whatever. But as far as like, I don't have enough time to be 100% honest. I don't have enough time today to be checking out all these different shows and listen to all these things. I might check out, like I said, an episode here or there, but besides doing what I'm doing, I have another podcast that I do too. So it's hard to manage time and then everything else, work a full-time job and have family.
Oh, what's your other show?
It's called Dark Side of the Scene. It's not anything related to what we do here, but I used to be in a band, like a metal band, and my co-host on that one, he's in a band now. That's how we know each other's from band stuff. And we interview other musicians and talk about some of the crazy things they've had happen to them, like trying to play music, like bad gear getting stolen, getting ripped off by recording artists or all sorts of horror stories. Anything you could think of that's kind of screwed up with the music industry, we kind of talk about.
No, it's on hiatus, but we have a local music show where we interview local bands and stuff too.
Yeah, it's kind of basically what we do. Every week we bring on a new member from some band from wherever. We've had stuff from Australia, England, where other countries, and we let them come on there, talk about their current stuff that they've experienced, like playing music, and then at the end of every episode, we play one of their most recent songs if they got one to share. So just kind of free promotion for the bands.
Yeah, over the course of doing that local music show, we've collected, I don't know, almost 2,000 songs by local bands. And so instead of infringing on someone's copyright when I have to take a break during stream. I just play music I have permission to play. So now people from all over the world that watch my Twitch stream are like into local bands from like San Jose. So that's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, that's cool. I just had I haven't been keeping up with it lately, but we once I figure out who they are, I made a Spotify playlist. So everyone that's come on the show and that gives music or whatever, I always add them to our playlist so people can download that playlist and listen to the bands on there.
Not a bad idea, especially if you're trying to pitch somebody. You're like, hey, we're going to add you to this Spotify playlist, and we have this many followers on the playlist or whatever. But it's a tough egg to crack too, though. Getting like followers on a Spotify playlist is probably harder than getting people to listen to your podcast.
That podcast started real strong and then it kind of petered off. We just started season 2 last week, and we are doing live streams on Wednesdays. So that's why my schedule's kind of tight, because every Wednesday now we've got stuff booked for that, and it's actually live streamed, so people will actually watch and stuff on there. And it's kind of awkward at first, but at the same time, like we did the first one last week and for season 2, and we had like, I don't know, maybe 12 people tops on there watching. I mean, it is what it is, but they were asking questions and comments, so it was a little bit more interactive. Beforehand, we were all just audio, so you couldn't see it or anything. It was literally just you listen to the podcast episode. So trying a little bit different for this upcoming season.
Yeah, we did Local Love as a live, like, in-person show from 2016 until like basically the pandemic, and then it took us a while to get our remote stuff set up properly, and then that just became such a huge pain in the ass. And like it wasn't doing very well at all compared to our other content. So now, like, maybe once a month, I'll interview like a person, like the singer of a band who has more to talk about than just like, oh, what's your band? When's your next show? That kind of stuff. Because that got really repetitive really fast. And I think that's why that show, like you said, it started off stronger than our other content. And then because it was so repetitive, because it was just about, a local band, and they want to go on there and tell you about their band. Well, that's fine, but that's the same thing week in and week out for somebody listening, and it gets kind of tiring for the listener,
As being someone in bands, I also understand that most people, at least in our area, don't give two craps about local music or bands. So they don't want to listen to the stories from the bands. If they don't even want to listen to the band's music, why do they want to come listen to a podcast about the people talking about their band?
Yeah, I mean, we found that when like people would tune in and it would be like a third of the traction, or maybe a quarter that the other shows were getting, and it wasn't people from the local scene. It was people from that had just watched our other content who had come along because they're like, oh, well, I'll just hang out. I hang out on this channel anyway. Let's see what this band has to say.
Yeah.
And like, that was cool and all, but like, the bands sometimes were a little disappointed because they, be like, oh, cool, you have this, your channel's kind of cracking and people are having a good time on there. They'd watch, Conspiracy Bingo or whatever, and then they'd come on and chat would just be dead. And it was like kind of a bad experience, I think, sometimes for some of the bands,
So what made you want to do the show that you do, like with the conspiracy and everything? What kind of led you to that?
We started with one show that was like a news show kind of, and it was like audio only and it wasn't live. And then we were focused on like extremism and conspiracy, but like one show a week just didn't do it. And what kind of actually happened, honestly, like we'd already hit Twitch and we were doing some video stuff. I was starting to figure out cameras and whatnot. And the audio was good. Everything was ready. The video was like kind of an afterthought. It was almost just like a podcast. People's cameras were on their faces and stuff, but it wasn't like, that wasn't like the thing. And then the pandemic hit. I kind of wanted to quit my job anyway. And so I was just like, well, if I'm going to jump, now's the time. And so I had to start, focusing on that and focusing on building the Twitch community and hoping that the lines where I run out of like money and the project that I'm doing makes enough money to support me, hoping that those lines crossed in a place that didn't leave me in a bad spot. And so, the Conspiracy Bingo show on Friday, it started out being a show in the afternoon. And then I stopped doing it in the afternoon simply because during the summer, it gets kind of hot here. So I was like, well, maybe we should do the show at night. And that's sort of it, It just came out of everything we do kind of came out of the Sunday show we do, which is a news show, and it still is, but there's other shows that came out of it. Like tonight after this, I have a local news show that I do. Wednesday, I do a show called The Intellectual Dollar Tree because the women that were co-hosting my news show got tired of hearing about these sort of public intellectual kind of galaxy brain fedora wearing guys. And so we've spun off a show about that. And the Cults and Satanic Panic show that talks about Scientology and the 80s Satanic Panic was because we were interested in Scientology, and that stuff was starting to take up a little more time than it should have on Sunday. So it all kind of just came out of the one show.
You haven't had any issues with your stuff not being published, have you?
Published? I'm not sure what you're asking.
Like, I had a video that YouTube refuses to allow on there because of the content that was put on there. There wasn't anything bad other than without fully mentioning it, basically, during that whole 2020 to 2021 era, when they made people make sure they had all their fruits and vegetables and their shots and everything else, the guy had mentioned his mom had all that, but she still passed away of the thing that was happening, and they flagged my episode and banned it, and I wasn't allowed to be on there, and they threatened to demonetize anything, which I wasn't monetized. I'm still not monetized on there, but because I was spreading false information. So I didn't know if you're doing anything conspiracy-wise, if you've had any issues with things being published because of the topics you talk about. Like, I've already ran into that, and I was like within the first like couple months of me doing a podcast.
So YouTube and Facebook, yes. Twitch, no.
I haven't really messed with Twitch. I don't really know a whole lot about it. So,
so the thing that happens at Twitch, and I don't know, they just fired a bunch of people, so this may not be the case anymore. But when you get a little no notice from them, you can actually reply to it and ask, like, well, what's going on here? What's going on? Like, what seems to be the problem? And usually the no notice is going to be from an automated system, but you do get a hold of a real person. And I just talk to the real person and I kind of explain what we're doing. And I'm like, we're actually, making fun of these conspiracy videos. If you look at my chat, you look at, what my co-hosts are saying, everybody, we are not endorsing these messages. Person is like, yeah, I took a 5-minute look at your thing. You are not endorsing these messages. And so I haven't been messed with since. As far as YouTube goes, I'm just fully prepared to lose my YouTube channel. I don't care. I don't make any money on YouTube. I've never been able to crack the code there, and I don't focus on it in any sort of meaningful way.
So I don't really specify towards YouTube or anything like that. So the hosting service was just, they automatically upload for me. So I leave it on there, and I've gotten a steady stream, but you have to have at least, I think, 1,000 subscribers before you can start generating any sort of money from there. And I've only got like 600 and something, which.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm confident that due to the nature of my content, everything I put up, even because, we lost a YouTube channel because we were I lost a YouTube channel on my local news show because we covered a local city council meeting that was done via Zoom. So people from all over the country were calling in this Zoom line and like spreading medical misinformation, and we were covering it. And I just uploaded the episode of Down Ballot as normal, and then I uploaded the post game from Down Ballot because we got more into that. And then a couple highlights we thought were, worthwhile, were put up on YouTube. Like our community helped us find them, and boom, that was 3 strikes, and we lost the channel.
Yeah, so far I've only got the one. I've actually thought I might have a couple more here eventually, but for whatever reason they didn't actually hit me, so I was kind of shocked. I don't understand the algorithm when it comes to YouTube.
So this last week, when we relaunched the channel, I put it on a channel that I have, like, I pay for like email and cloud store. I put it on that account. And so we did get we did get a strike from them. I just hit them up on Twitter and I was like, hey, and then they said, oh, we'll get back to you. We'll get back to you. And I said, this is an account that I, pay for, and then I pay for cloud storage and I pay for my email here. And if you look into the account, you'll also see that I have clients here. And, it wouldn't be great if you removed started removing my videos for being critical of this very thing that I find on your website, because I might suggest to my clients that they use different services for their cloud services and email. And they said, oh, we made a mistake, and they put my video back. Well, it was a live video, which auto unpublishes anyway. I don't want my live stuff up on YouTube. I want to choose what's up there, but they removed the strike. And I don't know if it was that I finally got a human to look at it, or if they were like, uh-oh.
We were joking around last week on the other podcast. My co-host he had guitar oil for like strings or whatever. And he kept having a lighter. He's just digging around saying he was smoking crack. And then I was like, well, you're going to get this banned on the YouTube because I think we're going to be smoking crack on live stream, but never had a flag for that one either. So like I said, I don't understand how any of that stuff works. I do a podcast because I don't do band stuff, and I interview people about weird things that happen to them or things they've experienced or conspiracy or whatever kind of floats into that realm of topic. So I don't really, like I said, when it comes to anything for monetization and all that other stuff, that was never any part of the reason why I wanted to do a podcast. To me, it was just something to do.
Well, I had to figure out how to monetize better very quickly. So I've done a good job. Mostly merch, honestly. I do a really good job. Not just creating, but like marketing merch, and Fourth Wall, our merch provider, been a really good partner to us. So I'm like really lucky.
I've thought about it, but at the same time, it's like the podcast is slowly growing. I think it just says I don't really know anything about listen notes or whatever, but I've seen people post this. I checked it out, and it's like I was a top 10% podcast. And now I just got something the other day saying I'm in the top 5 podcasts. Like, I guess that's good. I don't know. Like I said, I don't market the podcast. I don't advertise the podcast. It's literally all just grassroots on my end because it's just something that I do. It's like I'm making anything from it. So,
yeah, I'll just tell you straight up, doing it like full time is hard. Like, it's constant work it's just constant work because you can't, like I can't go live and have nothing, right?
yeah, you have to have something to go and discuss or just something to talk about. Otherwise, it's going to be you on there, people watching you and trying to make shit up.
Or just, I've seen channels where people who are better at it or whatever, just talk with their chat. And we've done that a couple times. But that always ends up with the chat is like, well, hey, actually, I found this thing and I want you to take a look at it. And so it ends up being just like a normal show where the chat like generates the content or the links.
I've debated on trying to do something like a live stream on this for something, but I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how interactive any of the listeners actually would be because I don't really get very many reviews wrote down like the 5-star review or anything like that either. So it's like I've gotten a couple, but then I look at my numbers and I do decent numbers for the podcast, what I think's decent for what I do. And I don't know. Like, I don't know how to have that interaction with the audience, I guess. I've asked for feedback from them and I don't hear anything. So it's like, whatever.
Oh, I imagine if I were to go back and look at our first few like live streams on Twitch, I would imagine that we didn't know what we were doing either,
Mm-hmm. Like I said, what I do, I think what people listen to, they don't want to hear me. They just want to hear the experiences or the stories from the people that come on the show. So like I said, that's all I'm here for. Usually just a platform for the guest. I don't try and do anything special. Like I said, I've thought about changing things up here and there, but at the same time, it's like whatever I'm doing seems to be working. So why mess with it? If it's not broken, don't try and fix it.
Yeah. And it sounds like your format is kind of dramatically different than mine. So yeah, I mean, I do a few interviews here and there, maybe outside of the bands, maybe 4 or 5 interviews a year, because there's just not that many people I really want to talk to. If I want to talk to somebody, it's because they have a book that came out. But if somebody had a book that came out, I'm punching a little bit high to try to get somebody with a book that everybody's heard of. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not super popular or anything yet, so that's punching a little bit high. But I did manage to get my most recent interview. The first interview of 2024 was Matt and Tony Browning. Matt went undercover with a bunch of skinhead and neo-Nazi groups. That's what he did for 20 years of his career, actually. So that was a great interview and a really good get.
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of requests lately from people wanting to come on the show, which it's good. I'm pretty much booked up through. So we're in the middle of January. I'm booked up through sometime into April with guests, and I try and fit them in here where I can. I don't want to try and do an episode every night. I have other things that I do besides recording podcast episodes. So I only try and do like 2 to 3 episodes a week as far as recording wise. And I've had to start releasing 2 episodes a week just to catch up because I had such a backlog going on. Now, I don't know if that's going to continue, but like I said, I thought it would be a lot easier to get guests than what it actually ended up being. But now that the podcast has gotten a little bit more of a name for itself, I think there's more people reaching out.
Yeah, I get a lot of email, but the problem is, and you might experience some of this too, you get email and it's like you read about the person and you're like, whoever's emailing me has not listened to a minute of my show. Why would I have on somebody to tell everybody about how to achieve their financial freedom or whatever?
I've had that too. Yes.
It's like, no, I don't want to have this stockbroker on my show. And honestly, you look into the guy and I'm like, I replied to one person. I'm like, do you want this stockbroker who appears to be a fraud to get torn apart on my show?
Yeah.
And they didn't respond for whatever reason.
I've had a lot of people lately being hypnotists and psychic mediums and stuff. I've had a couple on there, and it's not that I have anything against them or anything like that. Like if they want to come on and talk about the stuff, that's cool. I've always been skeptical on that whole aspect anyways, but I'm skeptical on a lot of the things that we talk about. And I don't know, like I just don't want to have so many of the same type of guest, I guess. Not to discriminate against guests or anything like that, but I don't know how much different all it could be. You know what I mean?
I mean, I'm very discriminate about my guests. Though I had a funny guy on, and I might actually hook you up with this guy. You may or may not. There's this guy who won the lottery. Well, he didn't really, he didn't win the big one, right? But he got like 20 grand. But he thinks he got the 20 grand because he was communicating with ghosts through a track phone. And I was like ready to go into that and like make fun of the guy. And he was like the nicest guy in the world. And he was like kind of cracking jokes about the things. Like he clearly believed what he was saying, but he was also aware that it seemed a little bit crazy. And so he was like the nicest guy. And, if you're interested in talking to that guy, I'm sure he'll talk to you.
Yeah, I actually probably would talk to him. That's the thing, like with my show or whatever. I've had people come on and like leave shitty comments on post or whatever, saying that people come on my show and all I do is make fun of the guests and they shouldn't come on. I've literally never made fun of anyone. That is not even what I do. I barely talk to my guests half the time. Like we might have a little discussion here or there, but like they say with the name tinfoil, you're calling everyone tinfoil hat and you're making fun and poking fun of things. I was like, no, I'm not. Literally, if you come on here and tell me that you were abducted by aliens when you were 10 years old and they took you into the mothership and they did all this stuff on there, I'm not going to sit there and say that you're full of shit because I don't know. I wasn't there. Do I believe that's the truth? I don't know. Like, my personal opinion is, I've said this multiple times, I think a lot of people that have these traumatic events might manifest things mentally into something that's not really happening because maybe they had something else traumatic happen to them and they manifested aliens or something. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a doctor. I don't know.
And like the alien stuff is in the culture, right? So
yeah, I'm not attacking or making fun or anything like that. I'm literally letting someone come on here and talk. They're like, well, you're taking advantage of people. How am I taking advantage of anybody by letting them talk? Like, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, they know it's being recorded and going to go out there. It's not like,
yeah.
We do have like, there's certain kinds of people I won't talk to. Like another quick tinfoil tale. There's this guy, Austin Bennett. We found him again through because he believed in chemtrails. And then he became like an anti-vaccine advocate or whatever. and he ended up running for like the state house here in California. He ran versus like a really popular guy named Rich Pan. And then after he lost, and by lost I mean didn't fill out the proper paperwork to even run, and then complained that the election was stolen from him, he saw the guy who won and then assaulted him, like on the street. And then we were kind of covering that, and then the people in my community were like, "Hey, dude, we don't really want to watch you cover this guy anymore. This guy lost his fucking marbles, and all you're doing is staring at a traffic accident." I was like, "Oh, okay." So we now have a thing called the Austin Bennett rule, where like if somebody's just gone so far out, so far kind of past any sort of reasonable, not thought process, but reasonable behavior, and has it becomes clear to people that all they're doing is like harming themselves and the people around them, we just stop covering them. And I would never interview such a person, you know?
Yeah. So I don't really ask the guest in advance to tell me like their whole story, just because I like to hear it from when they're talking. But at the same time, it's like I want to know a little bit about it. And then when I first started, I've had a couple guests they've told me some things that I don't know. Again, if it has the name Tinfoil Tells and some of the topics we talk about, I mean, and I've told everyone, I'm very skeptical. I'm a skeptical person. And I'm not here to discredit or approve or anything like that, but it's some of the topics that we talked about. This guy come on there and he said he's part of these experiments that they happened and this and that. And I started getting all these emails after the episode came out from more people that are involved in this supposed program that these individuals were apparently a part of. And they said, this guy's a fraud. I need to take his episode down, this and that. I was like, I don't give a shit what random email people are telling me, because if you're emailing me and telling me this thing's not true, I need to take it down, this and that, don't be spreading this information around. You're almost pushing that tinfoil narrative of the conspiracy. You don't want that information out. You know what I mean? So it's like,
yeah, that and that's the idea that like maybe they have a different version of events, and what they don't like is that your guest's version of events. And instead of accepting that, like, let's grant that this program exists. Like maybe people's recollection of it are going to be different, but they're probably thinking that the person you spoke to is controlled opposition.
mm-hmm.
I get that a lot. That, oh no, this other person, you know, when I used to interview more conspiracy theorists, I'd be like, hey, you know, this doesn't jive with what I'm hearing from these other people. And the answer wouldn't be, well, you know, we all kind of see this differently. These are weird events. And, you know, that other person just kind of sees it differently than me. They're like, that person is controlled opposition. They're working for the government or the Illuminati or whatever it is. And it's like, oh God, that's why I stopped interviewing conspiracy theorists, honestly, because it's like, it became, again, it was another thing that for me that just became so incredibly repetitive that I didn't want to basically have the same interview with 10 or 12 different people who eventually all end up hating each other. It's like, well, this is just like a Jerry Springer, you know?
Yeah.
But the difference is, though, I was openly antagonistic, particularly to the chemtrails community. So I think that that's going to be a major difference between, you know, me interviewing somebody who believes in chemtrails versus if you had a chemtrails guest on, because you're not openly antagonistic to their community. So.
No, there's certain things that I could be towards, but at the same time, I think 99% of the people that I've interviewed believe what they tell me. That doesn't mean I have to believe what they're telling me, if that makes any sense. Like, it's their truth, but that doesn't mean their events of how things played out are 100% accurate. I think everyone's mind has the ability to cover up certain things in the sense of traumatic events, or we just don't remember things exactly how it happened or whatever. I've had some weird stuff happen to me and I can't explain it. And if someone told me what happened to me as a story, I'd have my own doubts about their story, even though I experienced. I have my own doubts about my own crazy stuff because to me it's so freaking crazy. So it's like, how am I to write anyone else off? Because I wouldn't even really want to believe what happened to me, but it did because I remember it. I seen it. So it's like, How can I
I mean,
judge
it's
anyone
just
else?
simply like granting that other people have agency, right? Like
Yeah.
one of the things I've run into in talking to conspiracy theorists, and now more more recently in looking into some of the behavior of some of the people in I'll say the Scientology critical community, is that people aren't granting, not it's not everyone, but there are people who aren't granting me agency. They're like, oh, you don't believe this, you're paid by such and such a group to say this. And I'm like, I'm paid by who to say what? Like, why would this group pay me to write this article? You know, it's a it's really really weird. It's not that there aren't people who are paid to push an agenda. It's like that for a lot of people, especially people who are heavily invested in a specific belief or oftentimes in a specific content creator, that they can't just grant that somebody else doesn't agree with that person or thinks they're a piece of shit, or they can't grant any of that. It must be that some outside force is making you do this to tear down this person because they're getting too close to the truth or whatever. And that's like, if you view the world that way, you're just never going to believe that anybody is doing anything in, I hate the term, but in good faith. And now everybody's just your enemy instead of just people who just don't see things the same way you do.
I feel like today's, I don't know how to use the terminology correctly without sounding like a douche. I think today we're all pre-programmed to hate each other, if that makes any sense. Like, it's easy for us to disagree, and then instead of it being like, oh, okay, well, let's agree to disagree, everyone turns into a flame war where, oh, this is what I believe. Well, you don't believe in this? Well, you're clearly wrong. And we can't get past that. Like, it becomes a division. So it says, like, everyone's divided. Everyone hates each other. Everyone can't get along. And I feel like that's just been forced on us. And I don't know if that's a conspiracy or what, but like, I feel like if you don't have the same sort of mindset with people, like, no one can ever just get past that, like political aspects when it comes to that, or your beliefs and anything. Like, everyone's always finding reasons to hate each other.
I think the rate at which communication happens now is probably a big part of that.
Yeah. I've said that to the echo chamber of social media and everything else. That was the downfall of society.
It's just like how quick, back in the day, if somebody lived in New York and you wanted to disagree with them, well, first of all, you'd have to find out that they said the thing they said, and then you'd have to like call them or something, right? Like now they're just right out there on Twitter or Facebook. And so, and for me on that stuff, I think it really kind of matters what the nature of the disagreement is. Yeah, I think it matters what the nature of the disagreement is, but also I just don't argue with people on the internet anymore. There's nothing in it for me. I might make fun of people on the internet, but I think that's a little bit different than arguing with them.
Yeah, I don't do it anymore. There's certain people, especially with our other show, when it comes to band stuff and things in the past, and there were so many times that we could say things or whatever, but at the same time, it's like, what's the point? At the end of the day, no one cares. And I think that's the hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, is that we can all go up there and bang our chests and get up on our soapbox and preach what we want to preach, but at the end of the day, I don't think anyone really cares.
Well, at least not about me or you. None of us are famous, right? Like,
as long as we're not
famous people go out there and put their fucking foot in their mouth all the time. It's not that they say things that are wrong. I think a lot of times they say things that are stupid. They might even be right, but they're just like, they just fire something off because they think they have to, because they have a big following. It's like, well, what if even like you're kind of right, but the thing you fired off was sort of word salady, and now you just look dumb. What did you even do? Like,
the thing that pisses me off the most, and I've mentioned it earlier, my buddy, my co-host from my other podcast sent this to me earlier. It's at the comments, and I went and watched the video. It was pretty sure it was Scarlett Johansson or whatever, talking about if we could all just donate $1 or $7 or something, donate money to feed homeless people, and this and that. The same thing happened with the fires out in Maui, and we've seen The Rock and Oprah and all these other rich assholes donate your money. Why don't you donate some money? Like, the people that you're trying to talk to are clearly not as wealthy as you are, and yet they put the rich celebrities on there to tell people to donate their money to help all these other people, which, yeah, it's great. Help others if you can. But those bloodsuckers aren't giving off their millions of dollars to help feed needy people.
Or come out and be like, I'll match up to $250,000 in donations on this.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
Like whatever we get donated, we'll match on the other end. Like they don't do that. No.
Not nobody, but yeah, if they are doing that, or if they did donate, I don't know. They could. It could also be a thing where maybe they don't want to tell you how much they donated because then you feel like your $6 is meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I'm just kind of speculating. I didn't really follow much of that stuff. I donated what I could when the Maui fire happened. I've been lucky enough to vacation in that particular region, and I'm like, oh, they should build that back up. That was great.
I didn't donate. I don't donate to anything, and that's not just because I don't think about it. I don't feel like I have the extra money to donate towards it, and at the same time, like I've always wondered, does your money really go to what they claim it's going to? How much of your money is actually going to that? Because when you look up the CEO's funds or anything else, like where's all your money really going to? So I don't know. Maybe that's the wrong mindset to have. But that's just how I've always seen it.
I think the best way to do it is to donate. Sorry, I think I breathed in some water like an idiot. But I think that like the best way to do that is to find somebody in the same zip code and hope that they're doing the right thing with the money, right?
Mm.
But you never know. You can't know.
I've had people that I've actually know have things happen. Like, yes, I've helped like a GoFundMe or something like that. But when it comes to like these big old Red Cross or things you see commercials about, I don't know. My grandma, I think, used to send $20-something a month to feed the children of Africa or something like that. When I was a kid, I was always like, does that really work? They're like, that money really going over there? How does anyone really know that's where it's going to? But I don't know. Like I said, I've always questioned things as a kid, so that's probably why I do a podcast called Tinfoil Tales.
Yeah. Has anybody ever actually come on and attempted to tell a tinfoil tale?
Oh yeah, the episode isn't out yet, but I've got one coming out there, and they told me about a Phantom Time conspiracy. And I've had other people come on there, and obviously I think with UFO abductions, and even like I have a lot of people that have cryptid experiences, like seeing Bigfoots or Dogmen or anything weird like that. It all fits into the stories of not your normal type of experiences or whatever. I say experiences now because I've been lectured about calling someone's experience a story because it sounds like I'm discrediting them. It's like, okay, well, I'll start calling them experiences. But I don't know. Like, I don't know if the stuff that people are telling me is true or not. I mean, I think it is. I think that they're telling me what they believe is true, but at the same time, it's like it all fits under that umbrella of something that is out of the realm of normal. It's almost weird. So I feel like it fits into that whole tinfoil hat type thing just because a lot of people that believe in stuff like this, they think aliens are being covered up. They think UFOs are being covered up. The abduction. They think Bigfoot's being covered up. They think all these cryptid things are known about, but they're being covered up. So it all kind of fits back into that whole conspiracy realm. So
you had mentioned like UFOs and cryptids to take a break sometimes from the, let's say, more troubling sorts of matters we cover on Conspiracy Bingo. Sometimes we'll do a UFO night or cryptid night, and those nights are so fun because it's like the stakes on that stuff is just so much lower, right? Does Bigfoot exist? I don't know. Like, is anybody going to go, commit an act of violence because they believe in Bigfoot? Absolutely not. Like, the UFO, we always joke around that the UFO people and the Bigfoot people are cool and that they have weed and that those are the conspiracy theorists you should hang out with.
Well, the weird thing that happened with me, and I'll just throw that out there, I wouldn't say, I don't want to dive into the whole thing because I've talked about it before and I don't like taking my show and hijacking about the shit that I experienced, but this is the whole reason why I do my show. Back in 2007, I encountered something on the side of the road just a couple miles from where I'm at right now. And it was a big walking shape in the middle of the road. My coworker had swerved off the road to miss it. And then I'm like, what is this guy doing? And as I get to that area, I see a big black, headless, armless looking shape, like slowly lumbering side to side, like walking real weird, almost like blowing in the wind type of figure. And I stop and it walks right past the window, and I never seen a top of it. Like I couldn't see a head or arms or anything. And he'd pulled into a parking lot. So I hauled ass and pulled in next to him. And he's like, did you see that? And I was like, yeah. He's like, it didn't have a head. I was like, we have to go back. So we drove back. I convinced him to follow me back. And there's a big black dog laying in the road. So I started to get out of the vehicle, and he rolls down his window. He's like, what are you doing? I was like, well, clearly it's a dead dog. To me, I'm thinking that must have been what was walking in the road, not putting two and two together at the time. Well, this dog looks back, and its eyes are glowing yellow, and it growls at me. So I stop. I'm like, shit, this isn't a dead dog like I thought it was. And the damn thing stands up on two legs. Shit you not. And it's about my height. And I'm 6'3". We're like eye to eye for a couple seconds, and it just kneels down and goes off into the woods. And then I've never had anything like that ever happen before. I've never had anything happen like that again. I've never seen a dog just stand up like a person. Could have been a person in a werewolf costume. Sure. Why in the hell were they out at like 4:30 in the morning? In
That's a hell of a lot of work for a prank.
Yeah. It didn't have hands. It looked like a normal dog. I'm pretty sure it had like a bushy tail. It had paws. Everything about it seemed like a normal wolf-looking dog, or could have just been a big black wolf. I don't know, because it had that typical like pointy ear to everything. Everyone's like, "Oh, you saw a bear with mange." Just like, first of all, I didn't say anything had mange because it was puffy fur. Like it looked like a chow dog's fur, like really puffy. So, and we don't have bears here, but we also don't have upright walking canines. So.
Well, thank you for not shooting it, I suppose.
So it's like, what was it? I don't know. Apparently there's a thing called Dogman. I didn't know anything about it until that happened, and I started going down that rabbit hole, and it's like, oh shit. And apparently people see these things all the time. So did I see a Dogman, or did I just see a dog that stood up on its back legs? I've always tried to write it off as just a normal dog because I try not to believe in this weird stuff. But the more and more people I've talked to, and the more and more stuff I've listened to, I was like, people are seeing something. We all can't be crazy. I mean, I might be crazy, but I don't think I was crazy in this instance. Like, I'm not crazy about that. So, and I wasn't the only one that saw it. My coworker seen it too, but he refused to talk about it and then threatened me for bringing it up ever again. So 15 years, I never talked about it.
I mean, your take seems to me like the reasonable one. Like, I experienced this thing. It could be this. It might be this. I might not be remembering it accurately. Or 100% accurately, and I don't know. That's the right answer, actually.
No, I'm not gonna sit there and say it was a dog man or a cryptid or anything like it, but it was strange. I'll just say that much. The whole thing about it was strange. Like the other part that I didn't mention was when I went back to talk to him, there was a mouse standing in between us. The mouse was the creepiest part of it all because it was standing on its hind legs too, but it was cleaning its face, it was wiping its face, and I nudged it with my foot, and it keeps on cleaning itself. I didn't even care that I touched it. Why the hell? Why is there a mouse in the middle of the road?
Yeah. If your friend hadn't been there, I might be like, "Did you dream this?" Like, you know. But your friend was there too and told you to stop talking about it, so your friend didn't dream it too. Obviously, you know.
No. So
the mouse part is weird, and I do not like rodents. So I mean, I'm with you. The mouse was probably the creepiest part.
Just because I know it existed because I touched it with my foot, I moved it a little bit. The first thing that was walking in the road, the shadowy looking all black figure, I didn't see head or arms. That was the reason we went back. That thing had to have been over 7 feet tall. The dog wasn't nearly as big as this thing. That's why I said the whole situation is really fucking weird because I can't explain it. And that's the one thing that's always bothered me is the fact that I can't explain it. I'm the type of person that has to explain things away in a rational sense. And this is the one thing I cannot explain. So
kind of neat to have a little mystery like that in your own life, though, isn't it?
Maybe. A lot of people, I was on someone else's show and I've talked about it, this and that, and they're like, how's it impacted you? I was like, it hasn't impacted me. And I thought about it afterwards. I was like, I'm doing a fucking podcast called Tinfoil Tales because of this experience. So clearly it has impacted me. I just didn't really think about it in that sense.
Well, but I mean, it drove a curiosity about these things. I think they may have, maybe in the moment you might have thought they were asking about negative impacts.
Yeah. That I still think that's what they're talking about, but no, it's had some sort of influence on me. I literally talk to people now about seeing weird things, this and that. Back in the old days, when people talk about stuff, like, oh, they're fucking crazy. But now I don't say that because I've had my own experience. Like, so who am I to say that these people are crazy when I've seen something strange too?
Well, and it's just, if I listen to this stuff, I listen to the way people talk about it, right? When you were talking about it, you were hedging. You're like, I don't know. You said, I don't know what that was. Couldn't figure it out. Had to go back to see what it was. I thought I saw a dog. I don't know if that dog was the same thing I saw. Like, these are the ways, like, yeah, it's pretty clear that you are not pulling my leg here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when people are like, if people are going to make something like this up, they're going to be very sure about everything generally.
I've kind of noticed that as well. And again, not to discredit anyone that's been on my show, but oftentimes I feel like if someone has it completely down to the detail, the timing, and like very specific things, so much things, like I've had people come on there and say they could smell things like, well, how far away were you? I was like 300. How the hell did you smell something 300 feet away? Like, that's the type of stuff, like, I start to wonder, raise my eyebrow a little bit. I'm like, I don't know about all that. Is it true? Possibly, but to me, it seems maybe a little embellished. I don't know.
I mean, I think after something, especially if something weird happens, I think like our minds are, I think we almost have to fill in details that we're unsure of,
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I've said before, like when I've interviewed people, and I just threw out the whole alien abduction thing. I've never had anyone come on the show so they were abducted by aliens and probed, but I've always made that reference. I was like, well, maybe people imagine their brains manifesting aliens doing this to them because Uncle Creepy came in the middle of the night and did something and their mind didn't process it that way. So they manifested aliens instead of Uncle Creepy,
Or maybe people were legitimately abducted by somebody. I mean, I could see, like, if somebody were to abduct people, that if they were doing it, it might be in their interest to make it appear as if person was on a fucking spaceship when they were being abducted, right? Because then you fucking get away with it.
Yeah.
Because now this person was on a spaceship, and now people are like, oh, okay, sure, whatever, buddy. But there's like there's an actual real human being out there preying on people. I don't think that's a likely scenario for a majority or even, a sizable minority of these experiences, but I could see somebody figuring that out real quick.
Mm-hmm. No, I've often wondered that too, that again, tinfoil tell. I've often wondered if these abductions haven't been like our own people abducting people just to, I don't want to call it like a psyop, but like just to see how people would react. If that makes any sort of sense. Like, and then if aliens are really coming down and abducting people, why don't they abduct someone famous?
Right, that's what or just someone in a city.
I actually had someone come on an episode and they believe they're in contact. I wrote a book and everything, and they're a really nice couple. The one thing they pointed out, and I don't want to sound like I'm just quoting what they're saying, but they made it seem as if aliens did not abduct anyone but white people. Because if you look at all the abduction cases or whatever, it's always been white people. I was like, well, Betty and Barney Hill, I think Barney was an African American. They said they think we were originally abducting him because of Betty, but he just so happened to be there, so they took him too. But technically, they were only after like white people. I was like, I never thought of that, but come to think of it, I don't know of any stories other than that one of anyone else being abducted by aliens.
We might be biased on that though, because we're reading these, and we're only going to come across these things in English language publications, right?
Yeah.
So if something's, if there's a story about an alien abduction in Kenya or whatever, it's not going to be in English likely, and so we're not going to be able to read it, and so then it might not come up on our searches or whatever. So I'm not sure if that's the case, but I just find it interesting that you've never heard of anybody from like San Francisco being abducted by aliens, right? It's just like, why wouldn't they ever abduct somebody in a city? It's just so
Yeah.
weird. But I
It
think
always seems to be out and about, but I have heard people say they're in town, they've been abducted too, but again, I don't know. I don't know what to think about the whole abduction things. So
I mean, the joke we have about the aliens is that they came once, they met a few human beings, and they were like, "We are never going back there."
I've made references to they can travel all these light years to Earth and yet they crash. They made it all through space, but they get here and they crash out in the desert. Makes no sense. The whole Roswell thing. So I don't know. I was like, if they're that intelligent to make it here, they bet they can't make it without crashing, and they're clearly not that smart.
If your ship's going to malfunction, it's going to malfunction somewhere, though.
Yeah. Anything can happen, I guess. Like I said, I don't know. I want to believe. I literally have that X-Files, the old Agent Mulder thing on my wall behind me. Says the UFO says I want to believe. That's
I used
always
to, that
what I
used to
grew
be
up
in the
listening.
backdrop, like on my Twitch stream. But that poster didn't survive. I've moved twice in as many years, and that poster did not survive the first move.
This
So-
one is a metal plaque, so it should survive.
Yeah, yeah. This was just a poster in a cheap plastic frame, and so
No.
got-
No,
got
I was
destroyed.
always an X-Files fan. I think that's why I question things, because that was my favorite show growing up as a kid. So I love my monsters and aliens and everything else. I didn't really think they existed, but I love to think about that they could. So
A fun way to watch that show is to go through and watch and just look at all the times that Fox Mulder should be fired, arrested, or possibly deported for the behaviors he's engaging in as an FBI agent.
we were actually rewatching some of them this past summer. I started watching it with my wife a couple of years ago, and then got rid of Hulu, and then we signed back up for Hulu to try it out again for like streaming TV, not just so we didn't have to have satellite anymore. And I ended up canceling it because it kind of sucked anyways. But I won't be getting that Hulu sponsor now. But we were watching some of those episodes, and I kind of thought that I was like, man, you can totally tell this is a straight up 90s show just because of how the things are, like some of the things that were said. I was like, stuff like that usually wouldn't fly in today's standards, I don't think.
Yeah, and like the things I was watching for is like somebody isn't home, right? And he wants to like investigate. And so, because this is what you do as a law enforcement, you just checks and sees if their door's unlocked and just walks into their fucking house. And it's like, whoa, dude, you can't fucking do that. What are you doing?
Yeah, there's that. And I've seen it even on like almost any type of cop show. If you watch a cop, they typically do stuff like that in general. Like, oh, the door was open, so we went on in. I don't think stuff like that really works in like real life. If you're trying to arrest someone and the door just happened to be completely unlocked, so you're able to, that's still not, you don't have a warrant to go in there.
Right, right. Then in the real world, the judge would be like, "Oh, great, now your whole case is invalid. Good
Mhm.
job."
Yeah. Well, got about to that hour mark. I know you said you got a show you got to do tonight, so I didn't know if there's anything else you wanted to discuss before we wrap this up here.
Yeah, I've got an hour before the show, but I probably should eat something or whatever because I do drink on my show, so I might want to put a little foundation there in my stomach. Not really. I mean, I just I enjoyed this conversation with you. I checked out a few of your episodes, and the things you told me about the criticisms you get, unless there was stuff I didn't hear, seemed absurd. You were open-minded, and you listen to your guests, and you don't even crack any jokes, which maybe you crack a few jokes.
That's what my
But-
other podcast is for. We're dumb on that one. This is my serious show.
I guess if people check out my content, the best place to find me is echoplexmedia.com, and you can get links to everything there. What we do, try to keep it light and fun, but the things we talk about are real serious. And it's unfortunate when people's family, friends, loved ones get sucked down some rabbit hole and end up losing their connections with their family and their community because they've decided that some belief that they have is more important than their relationships. So there's I guess everybody out there, if you're interested in these ideas, just kind of take care of one another and keep an eye on your friends and your family.
I'll include the link in the show notes for anyone out there listening who wants to go and check Dave's content out. So, well, I want to thank you for coming on here and talking with me tonight. It's been a little different than the normal type of conversations I've had, but I think it's always good to have a little difference here and there. Well, the episode that came out today, it's kind of, this will date how long it actually comes before this episode comes out, was not really one of my normal. It was more of a joking and banter. The guest I had was from another podcast called The Stone Genius. So he was really lighthearted and goofing around and stuff like that. I was like, well, it's different from the normal gloom and doom of this podcast, I guess. So it's nice to have a little bit here and there. But if anyone ever checked out my other podcast, they're going to think I'm a dumbass anyway. So it's all good.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun. The hour flew right by.
Yeah. Well, again, I appreciate it and hope you have a good night. Remember, the truth lies in the stories we share, the connections we make. Stay curious, stay open-minded. Thank you all for joining us on this journey, and until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking, and keep exploring the unknown. Good night, everyone.